Hello everybody, it's me Roku back with some more League content, and in this video I'm going to go through every single champion in top lane and basically rank them according to their strength in solo queue. Now this is for patch 12.15. My last tier list video, patch 12.14, wasn't the best in my honest opinion. There were a few, it was mostly accurate, but there were a few champions that I misplaced because I didn't play the game enough, right? I wasn't really actively playing League at the time, so I wasn't really up to date as much as I could have been, but I have fixed that. I've caught up with all the changes that have kind of impacted champions, so I should be able to create a more accurate tier list video that kind of represents the meta currently, right? A few of the things that have been impacting the meta right now are here, aside from just the champion buffs and nerfs, right? Lane sustain and result tree have been nerfed. All the potions have been nerfed. Cookies have been nerfed. A bunch of the resolve runes have been nerfed as well, so this has impacted a lot of champions who rely on that to get through laning phase and nerfed them. And a lot of the ranged top laners who like to poke people down have, benefited from this change. Dragon buff has been buffed. Dragons themselves are way more important now, so all the champions who are able to respond to bot lane fights quickly and just, have global ultimates and who can roam down there have benefited from this, right? Enchanter items have also been nerfed, right? The healing and the shielding power over a lot of enchanter items have basically been chipped away at, which basically means that a lot of the champions whose job it is to get back into just jump right into the enemy team and get some work done, really attack the enemy backline. These kind of champions have been buffed quite a bit. So these are the big changes that, their consequences that I've kept my eyes on, in addition to all the changes. So let's just get right into the tier list. Aatrox is an A+ tier, really powerful pick, right? The durability changes have been great for him. The anti-heal nerfs have been amazing for him, right? The quick solution of just buying Bramble Vest or Executioner's Calling is not really a solution against him anymore. So yeah, Aatrox is doing quite well. Akali, B tier. She's not really, there's nothing really different about Akali's position in this tier list. She can't really put up a fight against a lot of the higher tier picks. She needs her ultimate to get anything done. She sucks in the early game skirmishes in the river, jungles, and whatnot. 2v2s, you name it. And even once she gets her ultimate, a lot of the champions higher up can actually ruin her days. So Akali is, she's an okay tier top laner. Camille, a champion that I kind of overestimated slightly, I'd say. I'd say she's A tier. She did suffer from the nerfs against the resolve tree, things like that, and she does need a lot of help to get going. It's just that in higher ranks, junglers are more likely to just camp a Camille and just help her out with a bunch of ganks, which basically alleviates her early laning issues, because once Camille gets her first Sheen item, she's just going to kill everybody all around her. So yeah, if we're talking lower elo, she might be just B tier, right? So there's that, but I'm putting her in A tier. Akshan, A+ tier, really strong champion. He's basically the best ranged champion in, not the best ranged champion, the best ranged top laner in the game. Get a lot of work done. He has wave clear, which is so rare for ranged champions. He can roam a lot. Even if he can't really farm his own laner for kills, he can get a lot of kills around the map, which basically means that, he basically has a way out, some hope to cling on to for bad matchups. Cassiopeia, kind of pick, not much to say. Cho'gath, if you know what you're doing, if you land your abilities, if you do everything perfectly, he's a pretty decent champion. But again, he does get eaten up by a lot of the higher tier champions. Sometimes he's just a free kill, really. And some of the champions, because of how slow his abilities are, can absolutely just ruin him. So you really have to be careful with how you use your silence properly to set up for your other abilities. Darius, really overpowered. He really needs to be nerfed, in my opinion. Just so strong. He just gets so much work done. He's amazing in team fights. His lane counters, he's quite good at laning too, because he can't just afford to rush enough defensive items until he wins. Just go straight into his damage items. So yeah, really strong. Not much to say really. He's basically same. My description for him in the previous tier list video is accurate enough on its own for me to not have to follow up too much. Dr. Mundo, lane holder, really, not much has changed. Fiora, I'll admit the Fiora is a bit lower on the tier list, only A+ tier powerful. The nerfs did hurt her a bit, so yeah. Gangplank. I'll put Gangplank in B tier. If you play Gangplank really well, he can be argued to be A tier or even A plus tier, but that's not going to happen. Most low elo Gangplanks are really sloppy. They don't really know how to play properly. So we're looking at like people who play Gangplank are just really abusable once you kill them once, right? You just kill them once, like he's just a minion, right? And he's quite susceptible to getting camped as well. Now, obviously, if you can play him properly, you can expertly play around these ganks and stuff. But just for the sake of all elos, I'll only put him in B tier. Up next, we have Garen. Honestly, I'll put Garen in A tier. This is mostly his low elo performance carrying him. He's really easy to play in low elo, really just no brain power required, which means that you can just access his like peak power really easily. He does have a role in high elo games as well, but if it was just high elo, I'll put him like B, C tier. But you know, low elo wise, that carries him A tier. Gnar, really strong actually. I've underrated him quite a bit. He is like a range top laner that doesn't fall, you know, to the typical weaknesses of range top laners like Akshan really. But he's kind of better in a more organized scenario, right? If everybody is competent and the Gnar player is playing it really perfectly, then Gnar is going to be a really nice pick. In a less organized, lower elo game, I guess you could argue he's a bit lower on the tier list, which is why I'm going to put him on A tier. Gragas is overpowered. Now, I did perfectly describe why he was overpowered in the previous, you know, tier list videos, but I just put him in the wrong place, right? Because I just, you know, let's just say that Gragas is the best laner in the entire game, in my honest opinion. Okay, the best laner. Not only is he great at trading, right? His barrel poke is like, it basically has no counterplay because it's not that fast, but it's fast enough to the point where the massive area that the skill shot covers, it's like a Sejuani flame breath that it can access from level 1. You know, it's like really hard to miss, not to land, but to miss. Okay, so it's like he can just do that the entire lane non-stop. He has HP sustain, and once Gragas recalls, he's gonna grab a tier or something, so he's gonna have 0 mana issues for the entire lane. So his sustain is completely covered. He's got great disengage because Gragas can just go phase rush and, you know, play with his E. And what he can do basically with his E is that, like, walk right up next to the champion, do his E, which is an instant CC, activate phase rush, and then just run away, right? And then at that point, he's just mostly out of the fight. And in case it even gets more like sketchy, he could just ult and set up for kills, or even ult like disengage and then just get away from that fight, right? Gragas is really just a nightmare to deal with. He's the best blind pick, one of the best weak side champions too, right? Just amazing. He also scales into later game team fights. He can get a lot of work done on team fights. So yeah, quite overpowered in my opinion. Just not utilized properly. He's really underplayed in top lane. Graves, niche weak. Gwen, the changes to her in past Toplane 13 made her stronger than I could tell, right? She's quite strong. They did nerf the true damage over Q a bit, but I don't think this is enough to bring her down considerably, right? She's still A+ tier, powerful, really strong. You can just, you know, throw up on the enemy in the low elo game, just level 6, throw up on the enemy, use all your abilities, get kills, and then just snowball, like, out of control. Heimerdinger is a counter pick. Illaoi just sucks, man. The only reason I'm not putting in an E tier is because of her low elo performance, right? In low elo, I guess she's like a CB tier, but then like she just can't bring her strength with herself, right? If we're talking a champion like Darius or something, Darius' strong point is his Noxian Might, but that, like, he carries that with himself. Illaoi can't. Her strength, she's only strong in the area she ults in. So unless the fight is in some jungle or in like around the area of Baron Pit, then she's not going to get a lot of work done. And even if she's fighting in the jungle, so many champions can cross walls and stuff that even if she does get a really nice ultimate, people can just quite easily get away from her, right? There's nothing she has to just stop someone from getting away from her unless she just puts her ghost on them. And by that point, she's getting CC'd and stuff, right? So yeah, not good against competent players especially. Irelia, pretty strong, right? She's a menace in lane, bunch of sustain. You learn a bit of weight control in this champion, and like you can get so much work done. Once you just buy Bork, you just all in someone, just auto them to death. Really, really, really powerful. Jax, he's overpowered in my opinion. All the things I previously said about him still hold true, right? His laning is great. Little tempo, all that stuff, he can abuse it really well. Although the healing potion nerfs, the Curpod nerfs, like the Territorial nerfs, I mean, they did kind of hurt him a bit, but just not noticeable, honestly, and he can just go D-Blade and fight just for the lane. And even if the Jax loses and dies a few times, he can just buy Divine Thunder and be an even bigger menace, right? He does scale up insanely well with his Sheen items, just his first mythic. Just does insanely well, so yeah. Jayce, I overrated this item, honestly. This champion item, yeah. Jayce has been continuously getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Not direct nerfs, but his items and stuff and just what he likes to do have been getting nerfed. He might make a bit of a comeback, I guess, but that's just he's not gonna make a comeback. He just sucks. And he's also really difficult to play. That's just such an underrated part, because if you play him perfectly and do everything right, I guess he can be a B tier pick, right? He's still gonna get gapped by some of these champions without even like half as much effort. But just that sheer difficulty and him not being that good in the meta means that he's like a D tier. Karma, and all the weird support picks, I'll put them in C tier lane holders. Kayle, D tier, honestly. She needs a lot of work to get going. Her early sucks. She needs her team to hold the game until she can come online. Unless your ultimate specifically counters the kit of some champion on the enemy team, like they rely on resets, right? Then your ultimate is really cracked. But if we're not talking that case, then Kayle basically has no uses until later on in the game. Kennen. I'll put Kennen in counter pick, right? Just honestly, they did buff I'll put him in B tier because they did buff him considerably. They buffed all the energy champions, right? They were struggling, so they did give him a bunch of buffs around his kit. So I'll put him in B tier. He might be on a bit of a rise, but I don't think he's gonna go that far, right? So yeah, he's mostly strong, but he's kind of difficult to play, right? So no one's gonna pick him up. Like he's just not a champion that people play. It's kind of like Ornn, where he's really broken, but he's just like so sleeper that nobody plays him, right? Kled really relies on being against like an autofill or a person who doesn't know what they're doing. Because if he's up against someone who's competent, who like doesn't just insta-tilt and fight him, right? Then they have a lot of counterplay that they can use against him to make his life a nightmare, right? Now, it does scale kind of well once he gets out of lane, right? If he wins lane and gets out of lane, he's just a monster, right? He can respond to fights really well. He can split push, just keep his laner on a side lane, and then just go for a massive flank. He can also respond to dragon fights, as I alluded to. Dragons are more important, right? So yeah, that is a bit, good from him, but it's all contingent on him getting out of lane, which is not always a guarantee. So he's staying at B tier. Lilia, I'll put her in D tier, right? Just honestly just there to counter some of the more slow lumbering champions. Nothing really too special here. Lucian sucks. I don't know why I have this here. Malphite's a great counter pick for a few of the champions, Jax and stuff like that. He's also super easy to play. He's also a great lane holder. So if you're like Filled or whatever, or if you're one trick got banned and you can use this champion as a counter pick, or like if the enemy team has a lot of AD damage, a lot of auto attackers, then you can get a lot of work done with Malphite. A great pick if you are like one of the later picks in the game. Just a great possible pick. Just having your back pocket. The thing with Malphite is that all top laners can play Malphite, right? It's just people just choose not to, but you can play Malphite if you've played this game for more than like 200 hours. Like just if you play this game for like a season, you can play Malphite. So he's decent to have in your back pocket as just like a counter to some teams that he's naturally good against. Maokai sucks. Mordekaiser, I'll put him in B tier. If we're talking strictly low elo, he's like really high up here, because in low elo people don't predict anything, people don't like dodge anything, people don't avoid anything, they just face tank everything and then just die. But it like in higher ranks, Mordekaiser kind of just sucks, because one, a lot of the more mobile and more technical champions are played, which means that they have all the tools they need to just avoid and just like counterplay his entire kit. Mordekaiser is really slow, really just like his abilities cover like a bit of a wide range, but they're really slow. So you can see it coming almost at all times and then just like work your way to avoid it. Just like he does fall off in high elo. Now I do think that it's quite underrated how much you can get done with his ultimate, but it just takes an insane amount of like macro and creativity to use his ultimate properly. It's also very conditional, and also Mordekaiser is like he's not a champion any high elo player is gonna one trick anytime soon to find out these kinds of possibilities. So I'll put him in B tier. Nasus. Nasus is mostly a low elo pick, right? Now he does counter some weird picks, right? So I guess you can kind of consider him a counter pick, but like I don't know, man. If this is low elo, like you can put him in B8 tier because basically, right? Nobody plays their ADCs in low elo. Nobody, nobody kites properly, so you can just walk up to people and just bash their brains out with your Q. Nobody's stopping you. But the second people become more competent, aggressive laners start being really aggressive and then just messing your day up, then Nasus really falters. So I'll put him in D tier, right? Unless he's doing some stupid cheese thing or he's countering someone, which I guess he can be considered C tier in. He is basically D tier. Olaf. Olaf has been continuously climbing downwards. The nerfs to his hatchet, where they nerfed how much mana, where they increased the mana it costs when he throws it, and all these stain nerfs have been kind of bad for Olaf because, like I alluded to with Olaf, you're basically fighting to get to level 6. Once you get to level 6, you can get a lot of work done, and a lot of the matchups that were kind of quote-unquote bad matchups, they start being more playable. But you have to get there to be able to use that power. And that's not always easy, especially because some of these champions, they outrange you, they have CC, they have ways to walk, like, disengage, right? So you're just looking at a lot of lanes where walking up to the minion wave is risky, right? And unless you're willing to, like, unless you're perceptive enough to catch, like, a really nice all-in opportunity and just kill your opponent, you're not in for a good time playing Olaf. But again, all the good things are still true. These are just the reasons why he's, lower on the tier list. Ornn is really strong, like considerably strong, honestly, right? Great laning, gives himself a bunch of free stats, gives his team a lot of free stats. Scales insanely well, great scaler, basically the best tank. I guess if we're talking strictly just top lane and our top just fighting other champions, Gragas is better. I don't know if you'd consider him a tank, but if we're talking just meaty tank boys, then Ornn is, as good as it gets. And because how low of a pick rate he has, he's not going to get nerfed anytime soon, so he's a great champion to pick up and then just have in your back pocket. Pantheon. I think Pantheon's quite underrated, right? He can get a lot of work done in lane. He has playable matchups into a lot of the matchups up top. He can, once he gets out of Leading Phase, get a lot of work done with his ultimate, ulting into the enemy jungle for invade plays, ulting into mid lane, ulting into dragon in case there's a fight there. He can get a ton of work done, so Pantheon is really strong if played properly. Quinn is basically just a worse version of Akshan, right? She's just not nearly as good. Like, her roams are faster once she gets level 6, right? She can get around the map faster, so she has that kind of advantage. But if we're talking, like, she really relies on the disorganization of the enemy team. Because the way Quinn kills people is that she has to, like, go in. She's not a kiting champion. Her range is quite small. She has to go in. And if we're talking a more organized team, that can leave her susceptible to just getting, like, CC'd and one-shot, right? When I say she's a worse Akshan, it's like Akshan also benefits from like disorganization, but Akshan has range and stuff, so you can get into a weird angle, get a kill, and then uses grapple to get away. Whereas Quinn just goes in and then she kills someone and then she kind of just dies, unless maybe some kind of thing happened where the enemy team is rotating and you can just catch someone on a rotate or something like that. Nico sucks. I guess Poppy's a bit of a good counter pick, but she's just not that good anymore. Top lane. Renekton, He's actually benefited from the backline nerfs quite a bit. He can get a lot of work done. One of the biggest strengths of Renekton is just his point and click CC. It's just like you can't go wrong with point and click CC. It's so good to have that on a top laner because you just get so much work done with a jungler. And also that point and click CC also removes shields, right? So with shields and heals being nerfed from enchanters and Renekton removing shields entirely, possibly if he uses the W properly, he's just like a menace to the backline later on in the game potentially. And his laning is like not even that bad. It's quite good if you can actually play him. Rengar, B tier, not much to say here. Same deal as last tier list. Riven, the backline nerfs have helped Riven a bit in my opinion, right? But Riven is also Riven, so she's almost always going to be at the higher end of these kinds of top lane tier lists, for solo queue that is. Rumble, same deal as last time. Ryze sucks. Sejuani, I've kind of been sleeping on Sejuani. I'm not going to be too shy to admit that. I've not really played against her myself, though. That's the thing. I've not faced her. Like, I faced her only a few times, but every time I just beat her because, like, she does go in and she chunks you out for, like, half your health. But then once she's done, it's like, okay, unless she did that, like, around under her turret, you can just, like, I guess I play Darius, so I just ghost up to her and kill her. But, like, I've not seen a perfectly played Sejuani so far. Like, I know that doesn't make sense, but I feel like if somebody were to be really careful with their trades, just trade at the very edge, have some really nice little wave control to just set up these kinds of nice trades and then just go for a kill with Ignite, like, I think there is potential for this champion to be like A tier-ish. And her damage is kind of weird because I've been in some situations where I'm fighting a Sejuani, right? And she just E's me, and that E takes away like a quarter of my health. Like, what just happened? So there's potential in her to be a really solid champion, but it's just either not being done properly or it's not possible, whatever. So for now, I'm putting her in B tier with potential of growth or potential to go down or just go out of this tier list, honestly, because when people discover these kinds of cheese things, they either just keep playing it until it's overpowered, and once it falls off, they just stop playing it. Falls off, I mean, like, you know, it's not no longer meta. Set has been struggling, honestly. The only reason he's B tier is because of low elo performance. If this was just high elo, he's like, he just kind of is struggling, man, you know, like this is the weakest he's ever been, right? Again, low elo only, quite good. All ranks B tier and at the very bottom of B tier, if that makes sense. Shen, really powerful. As I mentioned, top laners who can get like Roman stuff with ultimates and whatnot have been getting really powerful. Shen is no exception. I expect Shen to, well, Shen is a really strong champion right now in solo queue. Just get a lot of work done. So, yeah, like, he could just roam without losing as much CS as other top laners, which is what keeps a lot of top laners top lane. When you roam as a top laner, it's like you lose 2 waves, 3 waves, a turret. It's just insane. You can't actually fight that guy again. But Shen doesn't suffer from this as much as other people. Singed B tier, Sion B tier. They removed the voice crack. They removed the Hullbreaker split, which kind of pissed out from Sion, which has stopped most of the people that have been Sion players from playing Sion. He's just gone back to his old regular self, really. Swain sucks. Salas is decent, but he's basically just a counter pick. Just not much like you can do with him against a lot of the other champions, especially the meteor champions. You can just really bash him down. Tahm Kench is another one of the champions where I'm putting him in B tier just because of low elo. He's really easy to play in low elo, and he doesn't really have that much counterplay unless, you know, he doesn't have that much counterplay in the middle of the fight, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm putting him in B tier. If this is just like higher ranks or whatever, maybe he'd be in some of these lower tiers, but B tier for now. Teemo. Honestly, Teemo is way too, like, abusable pre-6 in my opinion, right? He's just so free. Like, he has no, like, mobility, right? So unless he sees the gank coming, he is just completely boned. So yeah, once he gets level 6, he can't just set up like a pseudo fortress around top lane, and if he can set up like shrooms around a potential river fight, then, you know, now you're cooking with gas, you know. So if you can play Teemo really well, if your macro is good enough to avoid ganks, then you're looking at like an A tier champion, honestly, just locking down top lane, just locking it down. But, you know, that's not most Teemo players. A lot of low elo Teemo players absolutely just suck, right? And that's where Teemo is picked the most often. So yeah, It's just way too difficult to play him to a really high level at high elo. Most people just play him because, haha, he's the annoying top laner, or annoying range top laner, even though they're better, more powerful range top laners. But yeah, it's that fantasy that keeps people playing him, I guess. Trundle, B tier. Tryndamere, A tier. Climbing back up the ranks. Urgot, B tier, hasn't really moved too much. Vayne, same. Viego, do I put him in here? No. No, I'm not going to put him in this tier. Vladimir, B tier. Can stay in lane a lot, can get a lot of work done. I used to put him in lane holders exclusively, but now I'm putting him in B tier, right? Because, like, Vlad's thing is just chunking people out. And even if he does lose the trade, he'll just naturally heal back up over time. So it's like, people having less sustain and stuff has also, like, worked to his advantage, if you think about it. So, yeah, I'm putting him in B tier for now. Volibear really sucks. Just, you either counter pick and get fed, or you do nothing with him. He's also a way better jungler, in my opinion. Warwick, it just sucks, man. This is what players who can't play top lane pick to just get cheese kills in lane. Warwick offers his team, like, he doesn't offer his team that much outside of lane. Not a lot of damage, not a lot of tankiness, not a lot of CC. He just kind of has a bit of a lot, but he's not the best at anything. So he kind of does struggle. Yasuo, D tier. If you play him like Jesus, I guess, the second coming of Christ, then I guess you can play him, put him to like a B tier, but it's like, in my opinion, Yasuo is the most difficult champion in the game to play, especially in top lane. Yasuo top is the most difficult thing to play in the game. Okay? Like, just, like, I've said this so many, every time I make one of these videos, I just say this line, but you have to outplay people to survive. Not to win lane and not to get ahead. You have to outplay people to be even. If you're not outplaying your lane opponent, you're going to lose lane. It's like, this champion, for most players, is a horrible idea to play top lane, because you're most likely not good enough, right? Not as an insult or whatever, but most players aren't good enough. So, yeah. Wukong, really solid pick. Scales well. Has a lot of great matchups in lane. Super easy to play. So yeah, just an overall solid champion. I might make a comment on Udyr on a later video. See how well he is in how playable he is in top lane, but it'll have to be when he's actually officially released. Yone, they nerfed his Sunfire build. So yeah, I guess I'm just putting him in B tier, right? Yeah, I don't think there's much need for anything else. Yorick, I'll put him in counter pick again. You gotta play something that can win you the lane, right? If you're not winning lane, then you might be in a bit of a trouble playing him. So yeah. Okay, let's think about if I missed anything really. Nope. These look good. These look good. These look good. Okay, that's pretty much it for this tier list video. Apologies for rushing through this video, but first off, this video is kind of like a continuation to my last tier list video, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of the champions, when I talked about them, I made references to that last tier list video. Hey, like, oh, it's like this, like, it's the same as the last tier list, because this is more of like an update to that, but just scaled to the current, like, patch. If you just care about how strong champions are, this tier list is good enough for you. But, like, if you need, like, exact detailed explanation on the strengths and weaknesses of champions in solo queue, then you can check out my last video. I went into a bit more detail there. I also rushed through this video because I recorded this once already. And my microphone was not on the entire time, so that was a nightmare. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.